Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here coming at you from the KnifeCenter, and today we're taking a look at 10 knives that everyone should own. Let's check them out. So these 10 knives are things that I think any self-respecting knife enthusiast should own at least at some point in their life in their collection. You don't have to own all of them now. And we've got some old school stuff and we've got some new school stuff as well that kind of tell the story of the modern knife world in a way. And in order to really truly appreciate everything the modern knife world has to offer, you gotta have a good baseline of understanding and experience. I think these knives are definitely gonna get you there. And I'm just gonna run through these brands alphabetically so we don't kind of rank anything in terms of importance. Let's get right into it. And I'm gonna start with Benchmade and their Bugout knife, which I don't think is the best knife that Benchmade makes. We've done a video on this before actually. The 940 Osborne I think is kind of the best of the brand, but you don't have to be the best knife in the lineup to deserve a spot on these essential knife collection list. And this Bugout, the reason why is, especially when it came out, of course it was very lightweight. They made a big deal out of that. The Benchmade, the company did, but even more importantly, I think, is the blade itself on this guy. At the time it came out, this really kind of refocused and reprioritized the industry in a bit of a way to thinner, slicier knives. It wasn't the first one to kind of push things back in that direction, but it was certainly the most high-profile knife to do that. And the blade shape here is just a phenomenal slicing EDC shape with that thin cross-section S30V steel and that high flat grind. Whole thing, knife comes in at about 130 bucks, made in the USA. Now the handles here are Grivory, and this is in the blue launch colors that they came in, but there are some upgraded materials available now, including carbon fiber and aluminum. You can even get some G10 options out there now and then as well. Now honestly, this is one where pick any one of the handle materials you like and go ahead and get that one. I'm not really as married to the handle material on this particular choice because, again, the reason for it being here is the prioritization of slicing on that blade itself. But it's a great little shape, even though you have a very lightweight knife, just 1.8 ounces, and a very thin cross section. You can still get all four hands on it from most hand sizes out there and get more of a full-size cutting experience out of the knife. Another big reason this knife makes the list is I think everyone out there should experience a crossbar lock, such as Benchmade's Axis Lock. You can do that flick open and close that I just showed you. It also lets you keep your fingers out of the path of the blade when it's closing. And it's also a completely ambidextrous system as well. It's technically not the newest lock on the market since the patent on this has expired and all kinds of companies are able to use this mechanism now, but it's still one of the more modern locking mechanisms on this list, and it's still a fantastic locking mechanism today. All right, next up is the Buck 110. And outside of something like a Swiss Army knife, probably the most recognizable folding knife in the world, I would say. And there's a few different versions out there right now, including newer slim ones with pocket clips, but they still make this classic version built essentially the same way it was back in the 60s when it was introduced, and it comes in about 60 bucks right now too. And for the purposes of this essential knives for your collection video, this one I do gotta recommend a single variant, and you gotta take the classic. Really have to experience where kind of all the hype came from. It was the original lockback knife, made such a huge splash on the industry that anything vaguely resembling this, even if Buck didn't make it, was just referred to as the Buck knife. It was that big of an influence on everybody. Nowadays, they're using ebony wood for the inlays, and they actually partner with Taylor Guitars to get pieces off-cut pieces that they use for their fretboards that they aren't going to be able to use and use them here. Pretty cool. You've also got brass bolsters, gives it a nice bit of weight in the hand, and thanks to the thickness, it's a fairly hand-filling grip as well for a folding knife like this. 420 HC steel, 3 3/3 of an inch with that classic clip point hunting knife profile. Just a phenomenal knife. No pocket clip, does come with a belt sheath instead. If you really don't want to own the classic though, check out some of the slim versions. They are, like I said, slimmer. You can get them with FRN or G10 or Micarta if you want upgraded versions. Carry them easier with a pocket clip as well. Next up, you gotta have a classic slip joint in your collection, and there's probably none, I should say, there might be one more iconic, but the Case Peanut is something that everybody should definitely have because you're going to experience kind of the classic case slip joint construction. These are put together pretty well, and you're going to get a small knife that is going to actually surprise you with how much utility you can get out of it. You've got 2 blades on these guys, standard clip point and a smaller pen point blade, or a smaller pen blade. Get them in cases True Sharp stainless, which is essentially 420, or you can get them in their carbon steel as well. This is the CV variant of one of the Peanuts with the classic yellow synthetic handles, and this particular one comes in at 40 bucks, made in the USA as well. Now, there's certainly a lot of other slip joint patterns that you could collect, but there's something about the Peanut that's really earned it kind of a cult collector status. I mean, there's folks out there that just collect Peanuts, because it's a little cute, sure, but it's super useful, and you can get a lot of mileage out of a collection with things like these. You can see there's a nice half stop on the close, snaps in really nicely, and there's something about it for me. I just love the old school yellow synthetic handles. There's something about it, brings me back in time a little bit, but no matter which version you choose, the Peanut is definitely the way to go. All right, next up, we're gonna come to cold steel with their Recon 1, which in my mind is essentially the quintessential working man's tactical folder. Not bottom barrel pricing, but it is attainable at just over 100 bucks these days, and you're getting something super solid and time proven. They've kind of really tweaked it over the years to keep it up to date, and the new versions, current versions, are just fantastic. A few different blade shapes, a few different sizes as well, but the clip point 4-inch bladed version I think is the most essential. We've got S35 VN blade steel with a DLC coating. It's got a reversible thumb stud so you can open it on either side. Handles themselves are G10. Fair bit of thickness on there. It's not super chunky, but it's not super slim either. It's going to be kind of just right. A couple of finger grooves to give you some retention. Prominent finger guard there at the front. 2 pocket clips so you can carry it either side as well. And Cold Steel's Triad lock, which from the outside looks a lot like that lock back. But Andrew Demko, who designed this lock, kind of improved things, gave it a stop pin and changed some of the geometries on the inside to make an even stronger lock that distributes force better in kind of off angles, and it's going to wear over time a little better than some of those classic lockbacks were, so shouldn't develop any real wiggle the same way some of those other locks might. But it's just a solid, impressive beast of a knife, whether you're using it for a tactical application or you just need a heavy-duty folder. This is definitely one of the first places you should look, and definitely something that everyone should experience in their collection. All right, next up is the only fixed blade on our list today, and that is the K-Bar. Known as various names throughout the years, such as the USMC fighting knife, because this one is United States Marine Corps there on the back. The Mark II fighter, as it was originally called back when it was introduced during the Second World War. But probably the most iconic and most recognizable fighting and combat knife in the world anywhere. You know, us knife folks, we can argue about other knives like the Fairbairn Sykes and other things like that, but to someone who doesn't know knives, to any lay person out there, this is something they're instantly going to recognize, and probably one of the most capable issued military knives of all time as well. We can certainly talk nowadays about things that are tougher, but in terms of things that were actually provided to military forces, really this knife sets a high bar. And today you can get them, still made in the USA, for less than 90 bucks. You've got a 7-inch blade here, slightly inspired by some of the hunting knife profiles that were out there at the time, just lengthened out to be more combat ready. We've got a hollow grind with a swedge out here near the tip, keeps that tip a little narrower, and you've got a fuller along the side, sometimes called a blood groove, but it's really there more for strength than any kinds of like flow properties, shall we say. Got a stamped crossguard here to keep your hands safe, and a stacked leather handle. You got those leather washers, provides a nice feel, a classic look, and they give it a nice oval cross section so it's not going to twist too much. Personally, I own one of these. I own an old Camillus one back from the Second World War, actually dated back to that time, and they left the handles pretty round on that one, so it's a little more twisty. But I like that one anyway because there's some history behind it. But in terms of an actual usable knife, this profile, this handle shape is definitely going to be a lot better. Now there's various different versions of this out there nowadays as well. There are some versions with craton handles, a few different steels. But again, this is one where I think you really ought to own the classic. I mean, it comes here the very traditional leather sheath as well. But if you really want that vibe, nothing at all is going to replace the original with that stacked leather, with the leather sheath, and that old school carbon steel. All right, next up is kind of a modern reinterpretation of kind of the classic pocket knife in a way. We've got a different blade shape here with this modified Wharncliffe and a very interesting handle shape, but it's the Kershaw Leek quintessential office and everyday carry knife, even slightly gentlemanly carry vibes as well. Made in America, priced really well. Starts about 45 bucks for the base versions. But this is designed by Ken Onion, and this is not the very first knife that introduced it, but it was one of the knives that helped push this technology to the forefront of the industry with another Ken Onion invention, and that's speed safe assisted opening. So it's not a switchblade, but as soon as you start to rotate that blade open, you get past a certain point, a spring's gonna take over and assist your opening and finish things off for you. It's a really cool technology that definitely pushed things forward, and it's still a fantastic design in terms of usability today. We got 14C28N on this particular one with a hollow grind, but there are some higher end steel versions, some powder metallurgy stuff. Those typically come with flat grinds on those versions. Great for everything, opening boxes and letters, just most EDC types of things on a lighter duty scale. And you can get them with a frame lock on the back or a liner lock with aluminum handles. This one right here has one of Kershaw's signature finishes, the black wash finish. But this is one, tons of different versions, like I said, and this is one you can pretty much pick any one. I don't care which version of the Leek you have in your collection, but you should definitely have a Leek in your collection. All right, next up is a knife that kind of set a new standard for what affordable knives could do, and it's still doing a great job and is still affordable today, and that's the Ontario Rat 1. Comes in about $32 to start. For that, you're getting a 3.6-inch blade here with a shape that was really embraced by a lot of folks who love to take these camping, bushcrafting into the outdoors, but also anyone that needs kind of an abusable shape for some heavier duty everyday stuff. Full flat grind, AUS 8 steel, D2 is available as an upgrade as well. It just does it all. It slices, it pokes, it skins if you need it to. It just works. The handles are a fairly simple shape overall. You've got glass-filled nylon over full liners, non-skeletonized, so you've got a real solid backbone. You feel it a little bit in the weight as well. And there's a ton of length on here as well. My slightly larger than average hands definitely fit there. I can hang off the back if you do have a little bit larger hands. You can even choke up around this ricasso area to get some more tip control. But for $32, it's gonna be very hard to find a harder working knife than this. And this is another one. Bunch of great options out there. Pick any one you like. All right, next up is a knife that I think technologically at least is kind of the oldest type of mechanism that we've got here. And that's the Opinel. And I think the number 8 is definitely the best one, although not strictly. You can get another size if you want, but if you're not sure which, the number 8 is a great place to start. And not a slip joint, technically just a friction folder. We do have a locking ring around here, but this is a traditional French peasant's pattern that really goes back to kind of the oldest school folding knives out there. And if you're gonna really appreciate where we are today, you always have to know where things came from. This is a great, great piece of history. Again, that still works today as an EDC. You can get carbon or stainless steel, very thin and slicey blade, very thin, very sharp edges. This particular one is the 12C27 stainless version, and it just comes in at 17 bucks as well. Now, on top of that great slicing performance, you've got great handle performance as well. Beechwood in this case, and it's got a fantastic shape. No seams on the back, which is nice. Creates a very comfortable hold, and it just works. It's super comfortable. That locking ring wasn't there, I think, originally back on some of the original versions of these knives and this style of knives, but introduced a long time ago at this point. And it's a great way to kind of keep things modern and fresh without losing the soul of this phenomenal knife. All right, next up is Spyderco, and rather than give it to something like the Para 3 or Paramilitary 2, which would have been maybe an easy answer, I had to give it to the Delica. And that's because it shares its DNA a little bit more closely with the original Spyderco knife, which was the Worker. Very similar size to this, almost similar shape as well. Blade shape is a bit more useful, I think, on the Delica than on the Worker, but overall, very much cut from the same cloth. And that Worker introduced a few things to the folding knife world that Spyderco deserves the credit for and really pushed everyone else forward. Of course, the most instantly recognizable feature is the one-hand opening blade, thanks to that hole cutout, but the pocket clip. Spyderco was the first company out there to put a pocket clip on a production folding knife. And now you can't shake a stick without hitting a folding knife with a pocket clip. In fact, the only reason we've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 here without a pocket clip is because we're looking back a little bit to some of the historical things that everyone should know about and everyone should have. But yeah, definitely deserves the credit for that. The Delica nowadays has a 4-position clip as opposed to the original Worker clip, which was molded into part of the handle. So nowadays you can put this in any carry position, tip up or down, left or right, so anyone can carry it. And that's backed up ambidextrously with that blade opening method and with the mid-mounted lock back as well. Beyond that, it's just a great size and shape. We've got FRN handle scales on this particular one, but there are some other handle, kind of more upgraded versions available. Sub 3-inch blade, really slicey blade shape. It's kind of interesting to see 2 blue knives here, one which with a lineage tracing way back and one with a lineage much newer with thin slicey blades. So you kind of cut out some of the big chonky stuff there in between the two of them, but everything comes around. That's another good point about historical examples. Everything that's old becomes new again. So we'll see all this come around again at some point. Now, the cool thing about the Delica as well, I mean, it starts at about $84 nowadays for the VG10 versions, but it's such a useful knife and such a popular knife that you're going to see a lot of different versions out there. So they're still keeping it fresh now. This particular one comes with K390 steel, so it's very, very high edge retention and a decent amount of toughness too, because this is not a stainless high metallurgy, or it's not a stainless powder metallurgy steel, but it's just a super high performer that still doesn't cost an arm and a leg. I mean, a bit over $100 for these right now. All right, finally we come to Victorinox and their Swiss Army knives. And there are so many Swiss Army knife models out there. You obviously pick the one that has the tools you want, but there's none that's more easy to recommend for everyone having in their collection than the keychain sized classic SD. And they start at about $17 for the red handled Celador versions. And there's probably nothing more iconic than the red handled Swiss Army knife. Like I said, even more than that buck knife that we looked at before. I did mention that. But the little red Swiss Army knife that can go just about anywhere. You've got just a handful of tools, but they're very well selected. You've got your standard pen blade. Next to that, you've got a nail file with a small flathead screwdriver on the tip, scissors on the backside, and then of course everyone's favorite thing, you've got the toothpick and tweezers there in the handle scales themselves. And it does not take up virtually any space. So you can throw it in any key ring. Lots of kits out there. I keep one of these in one of my sewing kits that I have at home. Just works just about any place you can imagine. And if you need more tools, you can obviously pick another Swiss Army knife, but you can still have a classic SD at all times. But I'm not going to prescribe just the red version. You can play around a little bit because there are a ton. I mean, we have, looking on our site right now, we've got 89 different classic SDs in stock. There's a bunch of different colors. There's a bunch of different graphics options that these come with. There's even some aluminum handled versions that are even slimmer. You ditch the toothpick and tweezers on those, but it takes up even less space and arguably even more classy looking. So anyway, that's it for my list of the 10 knives I think everyone should own. And it's interesting to think about, as I was putting this list together, I was thinking about some of the newer companies out there that are making great knives, and 10 years from now, maybe they'll be on this list too. It's kind of interesting to see the way they push things forward, and we'll see how they kind of last over time as well. But enough of that. Let me know what you thought of my picks, and let me know if there's another knife in the comments that you think everyone else should own as well. If you want to get your hands on any of these guys, we'll leave links in the description to take you over to KnifeCenter.com. And make sure you sign up for our Knife Rewards program, so at least you'll earn some free money to spend on your next knife when you buy one of these knives today. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center, signing off. See you next time.